It's round one of the NBA playoffs for the Pelicans, and I have the three biggest things you need to know. Expect a big series from Brandon Ingram if he makes these two tweaks, and why it's good the starting lineup won't change, and what to do about Jonas Valanciunas. It's a preview episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this, I don't even know what day it is. Sunday, I guess, is when this one's going to drop. I'm recording a bunch of stuff on Saturday here. This is a preview episode of Locked On Pelicans to get you set for this first round series with the Oklahoma City Thunder. We're going to look at three of the biggest things you need to know going into this one and what to expect. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want. You're getting coverage you can't get anywhere else. We already have the crossover episode with Locked On Thunder out for you to get their perspective on it. You've got another bonus show here. We're going to have a podcast after every game. We're probably just not going to miss a day of shows at all until they're done with whatever this playoff run looks like. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join almost 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. This is going to be a whole lot of fun, and I can't wait. And of course, become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. Because look, if you listened or watched that crossover with the Sacramento Kings, a lot of that came true in that game, and that's how New Orleans won. We're going to have a lot of content in here that's really going to help you kind of dive into this series, and we're going to start in today's show previewing this with the Oklahoma City Thunder. So let's lead with the most important player in this series for the Pelicans, and that's Brandon Ingram. They need him to have a good series. Struggled against the Lakers, both games really against the Lakers, and then played better, a little bit up and down, I thought, but played better against the Sacramento Kings. But he's going to need to take it to a new level, or at least a different level than the Kings game in this series against the Oklahoma City Thunder if the Pelicans want to win. And here's the good news about that. He's fully capable of doing that. He might not have the most playoff experience, but in that series against the Phoenix Suns a couple of years ago, he averaged 27 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal and block, 1 stock, and shot really well from the field. But if he wants to put up that kind of performance, he's going to need to make a couple of tweaks to his game, and I'll get into that here in a second. But we know that he's capable of doing this, and that's why I feel confident that you're going to see a very good version of Brandon Ingram. This is not a one-game situation where he can struggle a little bit, and because the Pelicans match up really well against the Sacramento Kings, you can still win them. You're going to need an elite performance from him over this series if the Pelicans want to keep it competitive. They're big underdogs in this. Per FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On and America's #1 sportsbook, the Pelicans are plus 440. They're big-time underdogs here. Big-time underdogs to win this series. They're going to need an all-time Brandon Ingram series. Again, he is capable of doing that, but he needs to make 2 tweaks to his game from what we've seen from him this season if he wants to make that a reality. First and foremost, he's going to need to shoot more threes. One thing to note with Brandon Ingram is every year in New Orleans, his 3-point attempts per game has gone down. That's not an ideal number. Well, it's stayed the same basically the past 2 years. Started at 6.2 his first year in New Orleans, 6.1 the second year, then 4.1, then 3.6 last season, and then 3.8. So it's ticked up a little bit this season. But that number has dropped. That can't happen in this series. They're going to need him to shoot threes because that is going to be a great equalizer against this Oklahoma City Thunder team. Oklahoma City is the 3rd best offense in the league. They're elite in the half court. They're elite in transition. If you want to keep up with them, you're going to need to shoot threes. It's really as simple as that. Brandon Ingram taking just 2 against the Sacramento Kings, that's not going to get it done in a series against the Thunder. If you go back to that Suns series, he took 4.5 attempts per game from 3. Shot it at 40.7%. If he does that, that's really going to elevate this Pelicans offense. Another area that he needs to make a slight tweak to for this series is going to be being aggressive, getting downhill, and attacking the basket. Against the Phoenix Suns, he was incredibly aggressive in that series. You saw him lack that aggression against the Sacramento Kings the other night. Now, maybe that was because of the injury working his way back. It could be for a variety of things. But he wasn't going to get to the line. He was kind of tentative to shoot around the rim for whatever reason. He went to the line just 3 times in that game. I've seen a lot of people complain about the disparity of free throws between the Kings and the Pelicans. Look, if you want to get to the line, you got to be aggressive. And if you're shooting a mid-range jumper, you don't get fouled on that. You're not going to go to the line. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is second in the league in terms of free throw attempts. You need to equalize that a little bit. And if Brandon Ingram can be aggressive, get to the line, they can do that. He's done it before. He did it against the Phoenix Suns. He got to the line 7.8 times per game, 8 times per game, essentially, if we're rounding up. That's a huge boost to this Pelicans team, and they're going to need him to play like that. The one that wants to kind of rely on the mid-range jumper that takes them out of their flow isn't it. Be aggressive, get into the paint, score at the rim, or kick the ball out. He's very capable of doing all of that. Now, he will still have opportunities to run the offense in the half court. I thought he did a decent enough job of that, 6 assists against the Sacramento Kings, but an aggressive 3-point shooting version of Brandon Ingram, who can then rely on the mid-range jumper to close things out once he's forced the defenses to adjust. That's what we need to see here. And if he does that, and he's capable of it, this team can win this series. They can shock the Oklahoma City Thunder, even if Oklahoma City wanted the Pelicans in this first round matchup. They wanted them over the Sacramento Kings. That has to do with Zion being out. But they can win this series. They're big underdogs, but it's going to take, a heck of a couple of games from Brandon Ingram, and I'm excited to see him hopefully deliver on that promise. So coming up next, let's look at the starting lineup. Should there be changes? Should Jose Alvarado be in there? What about what do you do with CJ McCollum? I'm going to break it down for you because I don't expect any changes with starting lineup, and I'm going to tell you why that's a good thing. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about Nissan because are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little bit further like me? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. There's a 2024 Nissan Rogue, which is perfect for city drives and great escapes. And with class exclusive Google built in, it's your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. So gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store are all built right into the 12.3-inch touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. There's also the Nissan Pathfinder, which has room for up to 8 in expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. So take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans, a bonus episode of Locked On Pelicans, I love this one, is also brought to you by Monopoly Go because I've been playing this one a ton. Part of it is I'm just a competitive person. And that's a big reason why I'm a huge fan of Monopoly Go. And I'm sure you've heard of it because it's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. And the best part, you can mess with your friends. You can charge them rent on iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly. You can also heist their vault for riches for yourself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is, and I am running up those leaderboards there. So it's not just my competitive side. You can also team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. And Thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want. Bonus shows here. No one else is hustling like this to give you the best Pelicans content possible. We have the crossover episode with Locked On Thunder. You're not going to get that Thunder perspective anywhere else. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join almost 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And if you're excited for the series, let me know in the comments down below. If you're an everydayer, meaning you listen Monday through Friday, let me know. And of course, give me your series prediction here. What do you think BI is going to do in this series? I think he's going to have a big series because he has to if the Pelicans want to try and win. So let's get into the starting lineup. You know, with Jose Alvarado kind of being the hero for the Pelicans, I thought, in that win over the Sacramento Kings. And with him playing well to the point where they benched CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram and Jonas Valanciunas in that almost comeback win over the Los Angeles Lakers. You know, I get the question a lot, and I understand where it's coming from of like, should they just start Jose Alvarado? Is having another point guard out there that important of a thing? The answer is yes and no. They're not going to make changes to the starting lineup. Don't expect that. You're going to see the same usual starters. It's going to be CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy in place of Zion Williamson, and Jonas Valanciunas. It's going to be those 5 guys, and I do think that is the correct move. So it comes from 2 areas. Let's start with the first one that's working right now. Don't mess with what's working. Jose Alvarado winning his minutes off the bench. Najee Marshall will play a role in this series. Winning his minutes off the bench. If you find roles that are working for them, and those are 2 of the most impactful players for the Pelicans. Again, I've been about this season winning your minutes when you're out there on the court. And if those guys are doing it, then absolutely don't change that whatsoever. Stick with what's working and keep them in their roles that they're used to, and don't change things too dramatically. Come up with different game plans, yes, but if you have a spot that a guy is kicking butt in, let him keep kicking butt in those roles. And Jose is doing that off the bench, and he's playing big minutes, and I like the way that it's working. One of the Pelicans' strengths going into this series is going to be their bench. Depth is going to be tested on both sides, but I think at this point in time, we feel good about the Pelicans' depth and being able to win those minutes. If you were to put Jose Alvarado out there, the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to be hunting him when they're on offense to try and get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander switched on to him. You want to keep Herb Jones on Shai the whole time. So bring him in off the bench either when Shai is out or when they have other subs in there too, and their lineup is a little bit weaker. Their starters are good. Don't do anything that kind of limits some of your strengths by playing into their hands. And I think by starting Jose Alvarado, that would be doing it. When a couple of their guys sub out and it's Shai with 1 or 2 other bench players, then put Jose in when that matchup leans more in his favor and try and win those minutes. And if you're capable of doing that, that's big because now all of a sudden you're at least playing them even or winning the minutes when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is out there on the court. Don't change that. Take advantage of that and then really push it when Shai leaves the court here. So by having a guy in a role that's working really well, I don't think you want to mess with that. And so I don't expect anything different. The other thing is 3-point shooting is important in this series. We just talked about it with Brandon Ingram and his shot selection. CJ McCollum, despite a quiet and inefficient game against the Kings and a bad game against the Lakers the game before, had been playing some of the best basketball of his career down the stretch for New Orleans, right? Regularly going above 25 points, 30 points. If you get some of that out of him, and he's certainly capable of doing that, you're going to be in a real good position. If you can keep the starter minutes even, play him even, or even win those minutes, which is easier said than done. OKC is favored for a reason and favored by a lot. They're the better team. You can really then let your bench take advantage, and you're going to need that 3-point shooting. CJ is one of the best on the team. He's had a very good year shooting the ball from 3. Same with Chet. That's a lot of shooting and a lot of ground that they need to cover. And when you get the ball movement going and those guys can get open for a shot, that's going to work really well. CJ McCollum this year on 8.4 attempts in the regular season shot 43%. That's fantastic. That's an insanely good number. Put him out there, make him a threat, and at least force the Oklahoma City Thunder to defend him alongside Brandon Ingram. Trey and CJ, who are good from the corners, along with Herb, is key because they, like the Oklahoma City Thunder, give up corner threes a lot. That's why also Brandon Ingram needs to be aggressive. Drive into the paint, attack the basket, draw in a help defender, kick out to open corner three shooters. And if they're making those shots and CJ McCollum is making those, that puts so much pressure on that Oklahoma City Thunder defense. It then allows your defense to get back, get set, and try and force a turnover, which is going to be a key thing in this. We talked a lot about the turnover battle in the crossover episode of Locked On Pelicans, so make sure you give that one a listen. So part of it is you kind of have stuff that's working. Don't mess with it. The other part is the potential. That starting lineup, as I told you in a preview episode for that game against the Kings, has been good. When you sub out Jonas Valanciunas and sub in Larry Nance Jr., that lineup has also been good. I don't think that lineup played particularly well against the Sacramento Kings, but if that starts to work out, now you're winning the starters minutes and then you're going to be winning the bench minutes. That's huge. That's huge for this New Orleans Pelicans team. It's about winning your minutes out there on the court. There's a lineup that has shown it, and that's just a one-game sample against the Kings where it didn't totally work. You want to keep that going. So I would not do anything at all for this to really be messed with at all. So keep this going and see how that works for this Pelicans team. Get that starting lineup working because it's proven it can. Keep the ball moving, the ball popping, and good things are going to happen, and you're going to put pressure on that Thunder team. If you're making your shots, they can't force turnovers. Find the lineups that work, play said lineups that work, and keep them out there. And I think the Pelicans have a blueprint to be able to do all of it. So I don't think you're going to see anything with the starting lineup. I've seen some people say maybe just start small. I wouldn't do that either. You'll see Jonas Valanciunas out there. I think you're going to see him and Larry play the majority of center minutes. New Orleans might try and go super small with Dyson at the 5, something like that. We'll talk more about that coming up in the next segment here. But going small, I think, is a little bit different when you don't have Zion Williamson out there either. But New Orleans is going to be in a position to try some different things here. And look, it's going to be a tough series. It's going to be a fun one, and I'm excited. I will say this, though, too. It is a little disappointing that we won't get to see Brandon Ingram and Zion out there. That was an important thing for me this season, was seeing them in the playoffs, and this injury to the hamstring of Zion Williamson has robbed us of that a little bit. But let's go have some fun then. Just try and win a series. Play your best basketball. See what you can learn from this, right? You know, I think we've seen for the most part that Zion and BI are a bit clunky this year. I wouldn't have expected that to change in the playoffs whatsoever, but this is a chance for Brandon Ingram to kind of remind you and show you that like he should be a cornerstone of this team, and hopefully he can do that. But it's going to take good lineups that are maximizing the guys and playing the right play style to do it. All of the pieces are there for that. New Orleans can definitely win this series. So coming up, though, the center position, Jonas Valanciunas, Larry Nance Jr., Chet Holmgren for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Is that a real bad mismatch? Should the Pelicans run their offense through JV? And I'll tell you why. That's coming up here next in a bonus episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Whether you're looking to make it go faster with a supercharger, more utility with a roof rack, sound cooler with an exhaust kit, or see better in the dark with LED headlights, whatever you're into, speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered. I work on all of my vehicles. And that's why I only shop at eBay Motors, because with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's that easy to make your car the MVP and bring home a huge win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only. Available to U.S. customers. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this New Orleans Pelicans team. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast. Crossover episodes with the other hosts here. Daily shows, sometimes 2, 3 a day. We're going to have a ton of content for you here. Everything you need to know about this series, the Pelicans in the postseason. By the way, it's not going to end there. Whenever the Pelicans are eliminated, hopefully in June, right? After winning an NBA championship. Or I guess that's when the postseason would end. They wouldn't be eliminated. We're going to get right into the offseason. We're going to have tons of draft coverage for you. Should they take that Lakers pick? Should they kick it out a year? Should they trade it? Who should they draft? What position do they need? Then we're going to look at free agency, all of that here on the Locked On Pelicans podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join almost 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And by the way, if you're an NFL fan, Locked On Saints, Ross Jackson covering everything NFL draft that you could want to know when it comes to the black and gold. There's also Locked On NFL, which is doing a huge mock draft. If you're a big draft junkie like I am, I've been listening to that nonstop, and it's been great. So let's continue to talk about some of the biggest things you need to know for the Pelicans in this playoff series. We talked about Brandon Ingram changing his shot selection slightly. He'll have a big series then, and they can win. Don't make a change to the starting lineup because you found the right roles for some of these players. But what about the center position? This is honestly the biggest area of weakness for New Orleans in this, right? There's been a lot of talk about, should they use Jonas Valanciunas more? Can he have an effective series here? This isn't a great series for him. Chet Holmgren is a nightmare matchup for him. Yes, you're going to look at Chet Holmgren and he's going to look like a stick, and you're going to think Jonas Valanciunas can take advantage of that. I'm going to say no. Chet has insane length and can block you from behind. So even if you get by him, push him around, that length, that wingspan he has is an insane shot blocking ability. The Oklahoma City Thunder rank #1 in blocked shots per game this season over a team like the San Antonio Spurs with Victor Wembanyama. They're that good when it comes to it. Don't test that, right? We saw JV have a bad game, and if he's missing shots because he has a limited post-skill move, he's just a big dude that lowers his shoulder, gets into you, and pushes you out of the way. You can only do that so much. Because here's the thing. The way Jonas Valanciunas helps you is when teams double him. And you won't see the Thunder do it, just like the Lakers didn't do it, just like no team has really done it since that Miami Heat game. If you post him up, even if he's eating and scoring, right? And this is why I said, even though he had 19 points against the Sacramento Kings, it was an up and down game for him. He really struggled in the beginning, and the Pelicans weren't able to run away with it later against a team they dominate. You're not going to do that against a team that you don't dominate in the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder are going to be thrilled if the Pelicans just try and post up JV and do that all game long. Because then you're negating Brandon Ingram. Then you're negating CJ McCollum. You're negating Trey Murphy. This Pelicans team thrives when there is ball movement, when defenders are out of position and they can generate open three-point looks or attack the basket. If you're posting up JV and they don't double, everyone is covered, no one's moving, and it slows the game down, and that's not how New Orleans wins at all. So if they do that, and I think they'll test it out a little bit early. They tested it against the Sacramento Kings a little bit early, and it resulted in some bad turnovers and just bad play. And then they stopped trying to force it to JV and just let him be part of the offensive flow just normally, and it led to good things then. So that's what you need to do in this series. Get them the ball once or twice early on to see if they double. If they don't, just use him in the dunker spot for dump-offs or on cuts or things like that, but don't force it to him. Chet can actually handle that. You might look at their body types and be like, there's no way. He absolutely can. Chet Holmgren is that good. JV is also going to have trouble on the perimeter guarding Chet Holmgren. He doesn't do well in space. And while I thought the Pelicans did a good job of changing some of their defensive coverages against the Sacramento Kings, you saw a little bit more of drop coverage versus the switches that they like to do. Drop coverage is where they sag the big man back and pick and roll defense instead of just switching to try and contain a drive. Chet's just going to shoot threes. And he can drive and he can play on the perimeter, and that means it's a bad matchup for Jonas Valanciunas. Here's the thing, though. It's not a good matchup for Larry Nance Jr. either. That's part of the problem here. By the way, Chet Holmgren takes 4.3 three-point attempts per game and is shooting 37%. That's not great for the Pelicans here. Now, Larry Nance Jr. is a bad matchup, too. He's very undersized compared to the 7'1" Chet Holmgren. And while the Thunder haven't been one of the better defensive rebounding teams, if you have a size advantage, that maybe negates a bit of a weakness for them. Do you want to try and attack the offensive glass? That's not really the strength of the Pelicans if they want to get back, get set, and kind of do what they do defensively. So I think you just got to kind of forego all of that. This is why when we looked at playoff matchups for the Pelicans, it was, where is the center position not a huge issue? The Clippers, the Timberwolves were those type of teams. This team, the Thunder, because of that's not great. You wanted to avoid Denver, certainly, but it doesn't mean that you have a much better matchup necessarily. It is a better matchup, but it doesn't all of a sudden make this series entirely different or winnable for New Orleans because that center position is still going to be the problem. So that then begs the question, do they just go really weird and go super small? And I kind of like this idea a little bit. You saw Najee at the 5 and it kind of worked. You've seen Dyson Daniels at the 5 and it's kind of worked. I think they would have done this way more often if they had Zion Williamson playing in this series. You don't. I don't know then if you can do this nearly as much, but it's probably worth trying. The problem with the Thunder here is they also have a lot of length and can go small. They can play Kenrich Williams. They can throw J-Dub down there or Jalen Williams and do some of those sorts of things. And that is not an ideal scenario for the New Orleans Pelicans here if that's what they want to try and do. So we're going to see, and that's where kind of some of the counters are going to come in when it comes to things. What does the chess match look like and all of those different areas and aspects of it. But the center position is going to be a problem. And I promise you, if they just try and play through JV might have a good game stat-wise, but they're going to lose. You've got to try and generate good open looks by moving the ball and by posting him up, slowing things down. That ain't the way to do it. If they double him, absolutely take advantage, because when you double him, do you know what they're doing, right? He kicks the ball out, you move the ball around until you find an open 3-point shooter. But if they don't do that and teams have stopped doing that, it's a bit of a liability there just to let him go post up and work. There's times when it'll work and they might need that for certain small stretches, but you don't want that to be the basis of your offense. Also, because I do think Chet Holmgren can contain that. It's going to be a tough series. I'm not going to sugarcoat it here and be like, they can totally win. Like, they absolutely can win. And there is an outside chance if they extend this series that Zion Williamson can come back and play. And that's an important thing. But it ain't going to be easy, right? Like, that's kind of the problem here. It really isn't going to be easy for this Pelicans team to go out and do that. And they have an uphill climb. You're going to need to see a well-coached series. You're going to need to see these players playing at their best, particularly the star players in Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum. Trey Murphy is going to need to have a big series. They're going to need Herb Jones be willing to shoot from 3 and knocking down those shots. You're going to need Jose Alvarado off the bench. You're going to need to press the point of attack with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and try and limit him. Get to the line yourself, too, to try and equalize that a little bit. But look, they're in the playoffs. This is fun. Not exactly the scenario that we hoped for. Not the scenario we thought would happen either. I didn't think they were going to follow the play-in tournament. But they're here. Let's try and enjoy it a little bit. And we're going to be covering all over the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and I'll be with y'all live as soon as the game ends. Game 1 ends. We're going live on Locked On Pelicans on the YouTube page. I will see you then. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. Go Pels.